Whenever a new Pokemon game comes out, there's obviously a lot of hype around new Pokemon and how they'll play competitively, but often a change to an existing Pokemon can be just as exciting. I remember how pumped everyone was that Torterra was finally getting Shell Smash in Scarlet and Violet, and even if it wasn't quite enough to make Torterra a top-tier threat, it gave it new life in the lower tiers of competitive Pokemon, going from a ZU-0 to an RU hero thanks to this one new move. It goes to show that sometimes a Pokemon isn't doomed to be bad, it's simply lacking the right tools. But it's weird that there are so many Mons without the tools they need to succeed, given that there's like a million different tools at this point. So many moves and abilities have been added over the years, and yet some Pokemon are stuck with the same stuff they've had since Gen 3. Today, I want to take a look at some Pokemon, which I feel are just a couple of quick fixes away from being much better than they are now. This is the Pokémon Pit Stop. What's a quick fix, you ask? It's simply giving a Pokemon an existing move or ability it doesn't have now, which would make it stronger. I won't be doing things like suggesting a new evolution or inventing a new move for it to abuse. I want to see if we can take the parts we have and make a hot rod out of them. I'll also consider buffing stats, but I'll follow Game Freak's lead and limit the buffs to no more than 40-point increases. And of course, I'm trying to keep these changes in line with the Pokemon's current design and not overpowered. So I'm not just slapping Wonder Guard on everything and calling it a day. Lastly, these changes will be made mostly with singles in mind. Not only is it the format I'm more familiar with, but the tiering system Smogon has makes this discussion more interesting. It's far simpler to buff a Pokemon from untiered up to never used or rarely used than to buff a bad Pokemon in doubles, since it would be competing against the cream of the crop. Cause sure, Mightyena would appreciate Parting Shot, but it'll take that and a miracle to get it on the same level as Incineroar. Joining me today is friend of the channel, OKreations. We'll be trading off throughout the video to show you the Pokemon we've tuned up. He's got some fun ideas, and I think I do too. I'll give him the floor before we jump in.
Hey everyone, I'm OKreations. I'm a fellow PokeTuber that focuses on fixing gym leaders and coming up with fun what-if scenarios. Looks like the Pit Stop was in need of a bigger workforce, so I stepped in to help out for the day.
Thanks for coming in today, I appreciate the help. To start off with a quick example, everyone and their mother wants Meganium to get Flower Veil. For those who don't know, Meganium has never been a competitive mainstay. While it had a niche in the overused tier of its debut generation, Gen 2, that largely stemmed from being the only mono grass type with any usable stats, plus access to Sword Stance. As grass types kept getting better, Meganium found it had nothing to make it stand out, and fell further down as the generations went on. Meanwhile, Flower Veil was introduced in Generation 6, an ability which prevents your grass type Pokemon from having their stats lowered or from being affected by status conditions like poison or sleep. Given that it's exclusive to the Fairy-type Pokemon Florges and Comfey, it seems to be designed as a doubles-only strategy, where your Fairy-type shields your Grass-type from these effects, but is still vulnerable to them itself. But if a Grass-type had this ability, it could use it to shield itself, no partner required. And would you look at that? Here, we have a Grass-type with no unique standout traits. A Grass-type with a big ol' flower, no less. I don't think you need me to put the pieces together here. Hell, most of you watching already did, ages before you clicked on this video. Similar abilities have made other Pokemon tough to deal with. The immunity to status moves gives Pokemon like Poison Heal Gliscor and Magikarp Clefable many more opportunities to enter the battle safely. And the immunity to having their stats lowered makes Clear Body Metagross and Defiant Bisharp much harder to stop once they've gotten started. Meganium likely wouldn't be operating on their level, it's still vulnerable to other forms of passive damage like entry hazards, so it won't have the deceptive bulk that Magikarp Clefable has. And with its mediocre speed and attack, its Sword Dance days are likely long behind it. But this would still be far more useful than its current hidden ability, Leaf Guard, and would be a welcome addition to Meganium, just like how you liking the video and subscribing to the channel would be a welcome addition to my day.
It's now time for Seviper to shine. And yeah, this thing's been idling in NU and below for basically its entire life. My biggest gripe with this thing is it's got a great exterior, but once you take a peek at what's going on under the hood, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's got a solid move pool, decent attack and special attack, but the problem is it's just way too slow and doesn't hit quite hard enough to justify that speed tier. It ends up getting outpaced and knocked out before it can really do anything meaningful at all. And thinking about it in the context of a normal playthrough, I'd excuse most of this if it was found relatively early in the game, so it could at least shine against any early threats that don't quite overshadow it yet. But even in its home region of Hoenn, it can't be found until just before the 4th gym, which in and of itself isn't the worst, but I think if it could even be used against Watson, it would make for a more interesting playthrough Pokemon. So in order to make that offensive side hit even harder, I propose giving Seviper a fresh fresh coat of paint, starting with its new ability in Merciless. Not only does this ability fit well within its poison theming, it synergizes perfectly with its offensive build. Now, suddenly, if Seviper poisons something, it's threatening guaranteed crits, acting as a great way to boost the damage output of the slithery snake without actually changing its offensive stats. Now, to coincide with that, why not toss a cheeky speed boost, going from base 65 all the way to 85? To me, it's just enough to let it creep past slower walls and some mid-speed threats without suddenly turning it into a sweeper. And funnily enough, there's a tool that Seviper had back in the only generation that it reached NU in, Generation 4. And I don't want to say that this tool is exactly what brought it up to NU, but I can't deny that it would help this guy out a ton. And that long-forgotten tool is Sucker Punch. It would give Seviper a way to pick off faster threats without needing to fully invest in speed. So let's throw that its way here. This doesn't turn Seviper into a top tier OU threat, but now it actually has a distinct role. A status spreading wall breaker with surprise priority. That's a functioning yet quirky engine, rather than one that's been tossed aside for some shiny new toys. And with Seviper getting a boost, I think it's time to cover its partner in crime, Zangoose, who pulls in with honestly a pretty strong engine all things considered. But it's the handling that really makes this thing less than ideal. Zangoose's whole identity is tied to Toxic Boost, and when that's active, it hits like an absolute truck. The issue is that it's very one-dimensional and still struggles with faster threats. And again, this thing is only found on the same route in Hoenn as Seviper, making it somewhat useful for a gym or two before getting pretty much outclassed by others in the same role. I could see Zangoose being quite useful against Watson, but his Magneton prevents it from being a guaranteed sweep. Man, I'd love it if this pair showed up on the route west of Mauville instead. But anyways, moving to the fixes, let's give it another option with a new ability in Sharpness, specifically enhancing slicing moves by 50%, which fits Zangoose perfectly flavor-wise. Not to mention, its one signature move in Crush Claw would get the boost, making it and other moves in its kit way more threatening. Next, I think this guy could benefit from the same speed boost that was given to his rival, boosting its speed from 90 to 110. That boost is huge, but still fair, putting it in a much more competitive tier without making it absurd, meaning it can now actually outspeed a lot of relevant threats instead of constantly playing catch-up. And while it's already got a decent amount of moves to work with, including close combat, I think giving it Sacred Sword would really put it a step above the pack, essentially giving it the Gallade treatment. It gives Zangoose a clean way to deal with bulky mons that might otherwise completely shut it down with defensive boosts. Importantly, this doesn't invalidate Toxic Boost. You can still run that if you want the raw power. But now, Sharpness gives Zangoose an alternative build path, which is something Game Freak has done more and more in recent generations, making Zangoose a one-trick pony no longer. Still, not breaking OU, but now it's absolutely viable and dangerous in the right hands.
Going with the whole pit stop theme, if Pokemon were cars, the Swift Swim water types of the world would be like your Honda Civic. They're boring, plain, there's like a million of them everywhere, and they get the job done. It's a reliable combination. Rain naturally boosts the power of water type attacks, and Swift Swim makes a Pokemon faster in the rain. So a water type with Swift Swim is moving very fast and hitting very hard when the rain is out. It's so simple, even the stupidest fish you've ever seen can do it. But while this combo is useful, there's a lot of Pokemon with it, and so competition is stiff. And frankly, Golduck is not rising to the occasion. It lacks a powerful second attacking type like Kabutops or Basculegion. It doesn't have the raw strength of the other monotypes like Floatzel and Barraskewda, nor the setup potential of Huntail and Gorybus. And in terms of raw stats, it's completely outclassed by Kingdra, save for a 5-point lead in HP. Golduck's main claim to fame is its wide coverage. It has unique moves like Psyshock, Grass Knot, and Vacuum Wave, helping it take on Pokemon which can tank its rain-boosted water attacks. But, of course, these attacks are not boosted by the rain, and Golduck does not get the same type attack bonus on them, severely cutting down their power. Not to mention, Golduck itself comes with a lower attacking stat than many Rain Sweepers, so you're trading off much of your Rain Sweeper's strength for a slightly easier time against rain counters, which means Golduck can be threatened by things which would be scared of a more powerful rain abuser. And of course, in recent generations, you only have a few turns to take advantage of the rain, so Golduck wasting them with unboosted attacks is the opposite of what a rain team needs. Honestly, the biggest issue with Golduck isn't that it's bad as a Swift Swim user, it's that Swift Swim is its only good ability. Other Swift Swim users have other abilities to fall back on if they're outclassed in the rain or if they end up in a tier with poor rain setup. Kingdra has its gimmicky sniper sets, Floatzel can run Water Veil to prevent burns from lowering its attack stat, even Seeking has Lightning Rod to give it immunity to electric attacks. Golduck is stuck with Damp, which prevents the opponent from using self-destruct moves like Explosion, and Cloud9, which cancels the effects of weather while the user is on the field. Neither of these abilities are particularly useful. Actually, sorry, no, Cloud9 was very funny. It let Golduck shut down Primal Groudon's Desolate Land and hit it with Water-type attacks. But that was super gimmicky, and Golduck didn't see any serious play even when Primal Groudon was in the game. Unfortunately, Golduck is lacking another solid ability which would let it stand out from all these other Swift Swim users, and that's the quick fix I'll be giving it today. Golduck has always been the unofficial third water psychic type of Gen 1, having explicit telekinetic powers in its Pokédex entries and being able to learn psychic moves in every generation, so I thought we could give it an ability which leaned into this connection. Tinted Lens doubles the power of not very effective attacks, effectively undoing a standard resistance and turning a double resistance into a standard resistance. It's largely associated with bug types, but the psychic types Sigilyph and Hisuian Braviary have it too, as well as another not quite psychic type in Noctowl. Golduck fits right in with this crowd, being another bird with psychic powers, and you could tie this ability in with the gem on its forehead glowing and altering its vision, literally tinting its lenses. Like with Swift Swim, Golduck isn't hitting as hard as other Tinted Lens users like Low Kicks or Hisuian Braviary, but here at least it's the only water type with the ability. It can fire off Hydro Pumps, which will put a dent in anything without Water Absorb, and it can threaten those switch-ins with Grass Knot or another of its varied coverage moves. In this way, it still trades off power for coverage, but now at least it isn't on a timer, and it provides a unique niche which neither the other Tinted Lens mons nor its fellow water types can recreate. Tinted Lens would easily replace Damp, though it might make sense to swap it to the hidden ability slot.
Pachirisu now rolls into the shop. And look, we all love this thing. It had its moment in VGC history, but outside of that, it's basically been coasting on vibes alone. The issue here is simple. Pachirisu just doesn't have the stats or utility to justify a team slot in most formats. It's bulky-ish, but not bulky enough. It's supportive, but not impactful enough. And sure, it got Nuzzle in Gen 6, but does it really even help here? Paralysis is nice, but with Pachirisu being so weak offensively, you'd be better off just using Thunder Wave on a stronger Pokemon anyway. This is where we lean into what Game Freak likes to do with these kinds of Pokemon, enhance their niche instead of reinventing them. So let's double down on its double battle prowess by improving its defensive support utility. To start, I get that Runaway can have some niche use cases in a playthrough, but for competitive use, there's nothing there. So instead, Pachi will be running Friend Guard. Now, Pachirisu can actively reduce damage for its teammates, giving it immediate utility from the moment it hits the field. And to make sure that support is felt for itself too, I think bumping its HP from 60 to 70 would work pretty well. That might seem small, but it's actually huge in practice. That extra bulk gives Pachirisu just enough staying power to consistently get off moves like Nuzzle, Follow Me, and Super Fang without getting immediately knocked out. What this turns Pachirisu into is a legitimate double support option, very similar to what we've already seen it do historically, now just with a bit more consistency. Now, it's got a fully charged battery and a clear job to do, and sometimes that's all a Pokemon really needs.
If Swift Swim water types are the Honda Civic of Pokemon, then bug flying types are the Chevy Cruze. It's not bad when you're just starting out, but it doesn't take long to notice some problems. A water pump failure here, a coolant leak there. Soon it feels like you can't take this thing anywhere, and you should move on to something more reliable. And honestly, for most bug flying types, that's totally fine. The majority of them are early game finds, and they provide a lot of value in those parts of the game before the player has access to most other Pokemon. It's okay if Beautifly has little viability in competitive Pokemon. It's already fulfilled its purpose, and anything else is gravy at this point. It's a starter car.
A starter car. That's right.
Begone, vile man! Begone from me! A starter car! This car is a finisher car! A transporter of gods! The Golden God!
However, there is one notable exception to this. Finding Vespiquen in its debut game of Diamond and Pearl is a chore. You need to slather one of these special trees with honey, then wait at least 6 actual real-world hours, but no more than 24 or the honey will disappear. There's roughly a 22% chance a Combee will be attracted to the honey slather, and when you come back, you can try to catch it. But don't forget that only 1 in 8 Combee are female, and the male Combee do not evolve, so it's more like a 3% chance you'll find a Combee you can actually use. Well, use is a strong word. Combee stats are only marginally better than those of Wurmple and Caterpie, but it doesn't evolve at level 7 like they do. It needs to get all the way to level 21. You'll likely be switch training it, getting it tiny morsels of experience at a time as the rest of your team carries it along. When you finally get to evolve this thing, what's your reward? Why, only a defensive Tankymon with one of the worst defensive typings in the game. Truly, your efforts have granted you quite the dividend. Even if Vespiquen was more obtainable like the other early game bugs, it would have quite a few issues. These stats are okay, but not great for hit taking. Even when it can take a hit, it isn't doing much in return. It's cool that it's one of the few non-poison types that kept its access to Toxic after Gen 8, but Poison is the easiest status condition to play around. Reliable recovery in Roost is nice, but a wall needs to do something when it's not healing for this to matter. Spikes and Toxic Spikes are good to have, but Vespiquen's largely inferior to the more aggressive hazard setters in this role. Nothing really comes together in its design, it's all just a bunch of nothing. How can we make this thing work while upholding its identity as a bulky bug-flying wall? The first change I'll suggest is buffing its defensive stats, putting 20 points into HP and 10 into each defense. It's not much, but every little bit helps. Will also help it feel bulkier by changing its hidden ability from Unnerved to Filter, which reduces the power of super effective moves against the target. It doesn't quite remove a Pokemon's weakness, but these moves won't be as devastating at least. Now Vespiquen can hopefully be relied on to take some hits, as long as they aren't Rock type. But what is it doing afterwards? Well, we'll give it some more utility moves like Aromatherapy, Imprison, Disable, and especially Strength Sap to give it more options for disrupting the opponent. I think it could also be cool to rework one of its signature moves, Defend Order. Currently, it boosts Vespiquen's defense and special defense by 1 stage each, but I think it'd be interesting if it changed depending on your opponent's Pokemon, like the Swarm Vespiquen commands is reacting to the threat in front of it. If the Pokemon has higher attack than special attack, Defend Order will boost Vespiquen's defense by 2 stages, and if their special attack is higher, then it'll boost special defense instead. This combined with Strength Sap could be devastating, letting Vespiquen set up, then get a massive amount of healing to take advantage of its defensive boosts. I think even with all these buffs, Vespiquen won't be amazing. It's even more scared of knockoff than most walls, given how Stealth Rock murks it when it's not holding its heavy-duty boots. And again, it has a horrendous defensive typing. But hopefully these changes make it worth the hassle it is to obtain.
And now we have Maractus up to bat, which is one of the few Pokemon that I'd say are now infamous for being forgettable, which is really frustrating because it's got a really unique design, access to some interesting moves, and even a decent special attacking stat. But when you actually try to use it, it just stalls out immediately. It's too slow to sweep, too frail to wall, and its abilities are either too situational or used better on Pokemon that outclass it by a few tiers. And in-game, the player can find it at the Desert Resort in its home region, meaning it could be used against the demon that is known as Clay and actually provide a ton of value. So, good game design there, Game Freak, but honestly, beyond that, it really doesn't do much, with it being weak to the next few gyms, right in time for its stats to start leaving a bit to be desired. So to start, why not give Maractus a bit more character with a unique ability like Dancer? It's niche, sure, but it adds flavor and occasional upside in doubles formats, giving it a chance to copy any dancing moves, which in most cases are stat boosting moves. And to complement this change, I'm thinking its speed could get a boost from 60 to 70, which initially might not seem that great, but I think the next buff in its moveset might make you think twice. With us highlighting this kooky cacti's dancing prowess, I think Quiver Dance would really do it wonders. It's one of the best setup moves in the game, and Game Freak has shown that they're willing to distribute it to fitting Pokemon over time. Now, if Maractus can get a Quiver Dance off, it can actually outspeed slower threats and start snowballing, but it's not perfect given its frail defenses and common weaknesses. It just has a clear win condition, set up and sweep if given the opportunity.
Almost every fully evolved Pokemon, no matter their flaws, have some competitive merit, some combination of tools wholly unique to them. Sure, it might not be a particularly useful combination most of the time, but occasionally you'll get success stories like Ariados taking on Deoxys and Darkrai in Gen 4 Ubers, or indeed Golduck threatening Primal Groudon. Any Pokemon can theoretically be useful, should the game demand their particular set of skills. Any Pokemon, except for Phione. Just stepping in while editing, apparently it's pronounced Phione, but I already recorded the whole thing saying Phione. Sorry if that bugs anyone, but I'm not re-recording this whole thing. Phione is completely, entirely, 100% outclassed by Manaphy. Same typing, same ability, same balanced stat distribution, except 20 points lower in each. Plus, Manaphy can learn literally every move Phione can, and more. Anything Phione can do, Manaphy can do better. Phione exists as a gimmick, the only mythical Pokemon which can breed like a normal Pokemon, and even then it just serves to make Manaphy more desirable. Manaphy and Phione both make Phione eggs, but you can't make a Manaphy egg. It's simply too rare. Phione's sole purpose is to be the cheap knockoff of the genuine article. Despite this, I see great potential in Phione to set itself apart from Manaphy, and to actually use the connection between the two to make something unlike any other Pokemon. In the Pokemon games, you get an egg by breeding two compatible Pokemon, either one male and one female from the same egg group, or ditto with any Pokemon that can make an egg. The egg will hatch into the first evolution of its mother species in the former case, or the non-ditto species in the latter case. When a Pokemon makes an egg with a partner other than Ditto, there's a chance for the offspring to learn a move from its father which it cannot normally know. For example, the Pokemon Fido cannot normally know the move Copycat, but if a female Dachsbun makes an egg with a male Lucario that knows the move, Copycat will be passed down to the baby Fido. Currently, Phione can't take advantage of this. Because it and Manaphy are genderless, they have to make eggs with Ditto, who can't pass down egg moves. That is what I'm aiming to fix. We know that normally, genderless Pokemon can't make eggs unless they breed with Ditto, so my first change would simply be to allow Manaphy to break this rule. After all, Ditto's already exempt, clearly the game can allow for it. I'm not sure if we need to invent a new egg group to let Manaphy do this, or if the developers could just program Manaphy to override the normal breeding rules, but either way, this doesn't seem like a big ask. In the case we would need a new egg group, we could just give Manaphy a third one to go along with its current groups, Water 1 and Fairy. It's already getting special treatment anyway. Regardless of how it happens, now Manaphy can make eggs like Ditto can, though while Ditto's eggs will always hatch into the other parent species, Manaphy's eggs will always hatch into Phione. Alright, a bit roundabout, but we've allowed Phione to learn egg moves. What kind of moves will it now be able to learn? The answer is all of them. Or rather, any one of them. The egg will take one random move from the other parent, as long as they aren't a Manaphy, Phione, or Ditto, and give it to the Phione when it hatches. This both gives Phione a huge number of options, while keeping it limited so it doesn't actually outdo Manaphy. Sure, Phione can now use crazy moves like Freeze Dry, Shell Smash, or Gigaton Hammer, but it can't learn all these moves at once. You'll need to use your one and only egg move wisely, and wasting it leaves Phione back in Manaphy's shadow. Before we move on, there's one more change I need to make here, and it's actually not to Phione or to Manaphy, it's to Breloom. Right now, Breloom shares the Fairy Egg group with these two, and with the changes I just made, that would give Phione access to Spore. Spore is an incredibly polarizing move in competitive Pokemon, being the only 100% accurate way to put your opponent to sleep, and as such, its availability is incredibly limited. Now, I don't think Phione would be overpowered with Spore or anything. While it would be the fastest Spore user, it's not much faster than Smeargle, the current fastest user, and Phione lacks both Smeargle's insane move variety and Breloom's firepower. However, having this option would overshadow basically any other move for Phione's special egg move, which would go against the versatility this was supposed to grant it. So I'll be moving Breloom and its pre-evolution Shroomish to the Field Egg group, to prevent Phione's options from being overshadowed by Spore.
Donphan is up next, and you can already hear the suspension creaking a bit. Donphan has always had a solid foundation. Great defense, good attack, access to Rapid Spin, and Stealth Rock. It should be a staple. And while it got a ton of love in Gen 9 with its Paradox forms, the Mon itself was kinda left behind. It just can't keep up with modern power creep. It's too slow, too easy to wear down, and doesn't apply enough pressure to justify its slot over other ground types that hit harder, move faster, or provide more utility. So how about tossing it a shiny new ability its way in Sand Rush? Under Sand, Donphan's speed would double, completely flipping one of its biggest weaknesses. You're not suddenly going to see it dominate every team since it still needs that weather support to really get going. But when it does, now you've got a bulky ground type that can set hazards, remove hazards, and actually threaten teams with its attack stat, while outspeeding things it never could before. Now Kadabra Guy and I did consider the fact that this might completely outshine another recipient of the ability in Sandslash, but I believe that both can occupy this space, since both have unique use cases. Sandslash has a bit more speed than Donphan, with the trade-off that it would hit a bit softer. So if you're aiming to outspeed super high speed tier opponents, Sandslash is your guy. But if you want to just outspeed your average to great speedsters, Donphan's gonna be a more reliable fit.
Alright, I think that about does it. We should probably start wrapping up around here. Sorry, did one of you say something? What the? Oh, it's you. Look, I was just about to close up shop and... Jeez, man, these were supposed to be quick fixes. I don't have time for... Alright, get in here. You're lucky I have a huge Hoenn bias. Okay, I get the idea behind Castform, but it falls apart the moment you start thinking about it. Castform's gimmick is its ability, Forecast, which turns it into a different form depending on the weather. This lets it fire off Weather Ball and get the same type attack bonus on it no matter the weather. However, a boosted Weather Ball only has a base power of 100, just 10 points stronger than Flamethrower, Surf, or Ice Beam. That means it's not putting up much better offense than your average Fire, Water, or Ice type, especially with these stats. I mean, base 70 in any stat is okay if you're a middle evolution, but it's quite lacking for a Pokemon which doesn't evolve. And when every stat is this low, I can't understand what you expect me to do with this, Game Freak. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any special reason its stats are like this. Maybe they didn't want the Hail form to overshadow Glalie? Oh man, job well done, fellas, you sure kept Glalie nice and relevant. Castform's low stats could be workable if it had a good ability, but as I said earlier, its ability is focused on changing its type to match the weather. So while natural Fire, Water, and Ice types each get abilities which further boost their strength, Castform uses its ability to get all the power and prestige of a regular Ponyta. Actually, scratch that, Ponyta gets Flash Fire, meaning Castform is getting outclassed by a baby horse. It can't even muster up one singular horsepower. There goes its political aspirations as well. There's just no reason to run this thing as a weather abuser, especially since so many great ones have been added over the years. You know which category isn't as crowded though? Weather setters. Each weather has like 3 setters, 4 tops. We can tweak Forecast so it sets up one of the weathers when Castform switches in, based on the item Castform is holding. Each weather has a rock which, when held by the Pokemon setting up the weather, extends the time the weather will last from 5 turns up to 8. If Castform is holding the damp rock, it will set up rain. The heat rock sets up sun, etc, etc. Now, Castform isn't getting overshadowed by literally any Pokemon with an ability. It's competing with a bunch of other Pokemon whose abilities activate when they switch into battle. Also, this is definitely outside the bounds of a quick fix, but we'll give it a Sandstorm form while we're at it. It's weird it doesn't have one, it just feels incomplete without it. Yes, I know Castform is made of water, and it doesn't make sense for it to turn into rocks, but it also doesn't make sense for it to turn into the goddamn sun. If we wanted, we could also bump up the stats of each of Castform's transformations, or look for some utility moves to teach it, but I'm actually going to leave the buffs here. It will likely be the weakest setter for each of the weathers, and I kind of want to keep it that way. Throughout the generations, even after weather was nerfed in Gen 6, the best weather setters get bumped up to the higher tiers of competitive play. In Gen 9, for example, the current generation, the lowest ranked range setter is Politoed, who is in the rarely used tier. If you wanted to run a range strategy in a tier lower than RU, like never used or zero used, you'd need to set it manually with the move Rain Dance, which is far less reliable. Having Castform be able to set up any weather it wants, at the cost of being weaker than any other weather setter, ensures that these strategies remain open to players in most, if not every, format. And sometimes that's more important than ensuring one individual Pokemon gets ranked in a higher tier. There will always be low-tier Pokemon, that's pretty much unavoidable given the sheer number at this point. And while we could strive to make the gaps between each tier smaller and smaller, it's not like that would necessarily make each tier more fun to play. Just by looking at how many people keep these low-tier metagames running, you can tell there's something which keeps people coming back. So yeah, while it can be fun to bump a Pokemon from untiered to OU staple, sometimes a Pokemon will make more impact as a reliable low-tier hero. Alright, done for real this time, I'm going to close up shop. Do you have a Pokemon you think is in need of a quick fix? Go ahead and leave it in the lot and drop the keys in the receptacle. By which I mean, let me know in the comments below. Whether you have a fix in mind, or a Pokemon you want me to take a swing at, I'd love to hear your suggestions. And of course, if you think I upsold you on unnecessary changes today, or didn't properly address a Pokemon's problems, the comment section is good for that too. A big thanks to OKreations for stopping by and lending his insight for these fixes. Definitely check out his channel. I especially liked his recent video, outlining how he changed each Kanto Gym Leaders teams if they were fought at different points throughout the story. And as always, big thanks to Parker for her help editing my part of the script into something halfway listenable. Check out her channel too. Her latest video at time of writing is a breakdown of the Covey kids from the most recent Hunger Games book, Sunrise on the Reaping, and how the poems they're named after reflect wider themes in the series as a whole. And hey, rule of 3, check out my videos too. If you wanna, you know, I think they're pretty good at least. Thanks for making it this far. I'll catch you later.
What are you... No. Oh! Get him, Charlie! Yeah, get him! Get him! Get him for Charlie! Get him!